Ever been bitten by a dog? I hadn't either until one ordinary morning walk turned into something I'll never forget. You think you're safe. You're doing what you've done 100 times before, and then, in an instant, everything changes. Before I dive in, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who might need a reminder that life doesn't always give us a warning, but we can still choose to be ready for it. So here's what happened. Carl and I were on the last stretch of our morning walk, maybe a mile from home. We'd done that route for years in our neighborhood. It was quiet, peaceful, cool, one of these calm Houston mornings, which is very rare, where you just enjoy the air and the rhythm of walking. Up ahead, we saw a dog in the middle of the street. It wasn't barking, snarling, or acting aggressive. It actually seemed friendly, just looking at us, then slowly walked our way. Nothing about it felt threatening. And then, in an instant, everything changed. Before I could react, the dog lunged. It grabbed my right hand, and my thumb and index was in its mouth, and it pulled me straight to the ground. It was so painful, and I was yelling, and I thought I'd lost my thumb. I honestly thought it was going to take my thumb off. I just remember screaming and in that blur of shock, looking at the dog and thinking, oh my God, this dog is going to attack my face. Carl was trying to pull it off me, then it turned on him. Somehow he got it to back off. It didn't affect him. And just like that, it ran a few yards away and sat near a nearby house watching us. Later, we learned it was a terrier breed that not something any of us picture being very dangerous, but in that moment, it didn't matter what kind it was. Everything I thought was safe, familiar, and predictable wasn't. That's how fast life can change. 1 minute you're finishing your walk, and the next, you're realizing how fragile normal really is. After the dog finally backed off, everything went quiet. It's strange how fast chaos can turn into silence. My hand was throbbing sharp, but honestly, the shock hit me harder. I remember standing there, staring at my hand, trying to make sense of what had happened. Carl was beside me asking, "Vicky, are you okay?" And I could barely answer. I was crying so hard, it hurt so bad. We didn't have our phones. We never carried them on our walks. And we also didn't have anything to hit the dog with, so there was no way to call for help. Thankfully, a neighbor heard me screaming. She came outside and called 911 and told us to come sit on her front porch while we waited. I sat in her chair, shaking, crying, trying to hold pressure on my hand and stop the bleeding, and that's when the tears just would not stop. I couldn't stop crying, partly from the pain, but mostly from the shock. I remember apologizing to her, to the EMS, to everybody, thinking that I should not be crying. Even though they were kind and calm, it made me realize that shock looks differently for all of us. Some people freeze, some people get angry, and some, like me that day, just can't stop crying. It's our body's way of trying to catch up to what just happened. When the EMS arrived, they bandaged my hand and decided to take me to the hospital to check for nerve or ligament damage. A police officer had come to take the report, and it all felt surreal. One moment we were nearly home, and the next I was sitting on a stranger's porch, hand-wrapped, replay all in my head. That's how quickly life can turn. You think you're safe? You think you've done this routine 100 times before, and then you're reminded how fragile normal really is. Sitting there in the emergency area, I remember thinking how ordinary that morning had been. No warning signs, no reason to expect anything unusual. And that's what struck me the most, how quickly something so normal could turn into something life-changing. One moment you're doing what you've done 100 times and enjoy, and the next you're sitting in a hospital trying to process how everything flipped so fast. And honestly, that's how life works sometimes. You could be walking through your routine, doing everything right, and then something changes. Maybe it's a phone call that changes your day, a company email that changes your job, or a diagnosis that changes your plans, or a loss that changes everything you thought was certain. That morning reminded me that feeling safe and being prepared aren't the same thing. One can disappear in seconds, and the other takes intention. We can't control everything that happens, but we can prepare for how we'll respond when life changes directions. Normal is fragile, and readiness isn't about expecting bad things. It's about being steady when the unexpected happens. That morning really changed how I think about readiness. It's not just about money or paperwork. It's about habits, awareness, and perspective. Now, I never leave for a walk without my phone. And that might sound small, but honestly, it's the small things that make the biggest difference when life catches you off guard. I also carry something simple for protection, a dog deodorant or pepper spray, not because I expect trouble, but because I want options if I ever need them. That experience made me think about how easily we overlook the small things. Even when we're proactive, there's always room to double-check or fine-tune. Maybe for you, it's updating beneficiary forms. Maybe it's organizing your will or review coverage, insurance coverage, or setting aside a little extra for emergencies. Not out of fear, but because life happens. Readiness isn't one big decision, it's built from small, thoughtful ones. Carry your phone, tell someone your route, keep important documents easy to find, review the basics every so often. These small steps create options when life changes the plan. They don't control the future, but they help you respond with clarity and confidence. In the days after the attack, I found myself asking deeper questions. Not about the bite itself, but about what moments like that uncover. Once the fear passes, you start to see what's underneath, how fragile normal is, and how quickly comfort turns to chaos, and how easily we take stability for granted. That morning reminded me to slow down and look at what matters most. Not just what's urgent, but what's important. Here are a few questions I ask myself. What routines do I rush through without being present? Who shows up when things go wrong, and do they know how much that means? What areas of life feel safe, but might not be as secure as I assumed? And am I building enough margin in time, faith, and finances to handle surprises? Moments like that remind us it's not about being fearless, it's about being aware. Awareness helps us respond instead of react. And that's where real strength begins to grow. You know what else that morning made me think about? How often we assume the people around us know where we are and what we'd want, when really they might not. My mom, who lives with us, knew we walked every morning and about how long we'd be gone. But that day we didn't come home. She started to worry. We hadn't called. We hadn't checked in, and that really stayed with me. Because readiness isn't just about planning. It's about communication. If something unexpected happens, would someone know where you are, who to call, or what matters most to you if you couldn't say it yourself? So here's what I encourage. If you're going somewhere, tell someone your plan. Share a few key details with a trusted contact. Not out of fear, but out of care. Make sure the right people know your wishes, your health preferences, your financial contacts, even where your documents are kept. These small steps are acts of love, ways of saying, I care enough to make this easier for you if something ever happens. That kind of communication doesn't limit freedom, it protects it. And I was lucky that morning that Carl was there, he wasn't hurt, and he helped me and he protected me. And he knew a lot of this. Life doesn't always warn us before it changes, but when it does, it reveals what truly matters. Not what's perfect, but what's prepared. That morning reminded me how fragile normal can be, but it also reminded me how strong we become when we plan ahead and stay aware. If today's story made you pause, take it as your nudge. Don't wait for life to catch you off guard. Start now, review your plan, strengthen what matters, have those conversations while things are calm, and be aware of your surroundings. You can connect with me at B Financial Partners or call me at 832-698-2010 if you have any concerns or questions. And please subscribe, like, and share this episode with someone who might need the same reminder today. And remember, I'm Vicki Jern, and be financially prepared for today and the uncertainties of tomorrow.